Hey everyone. So it can be scary trying to play a new role with how much there is to learn in the game. Builds, classes, and rotations differ for each role, so I thought I'd make a guide for those trying to start playing as a side noter. We're going to go over the basics, starting from the best classes to play when starting out before moving on to some other topics like rotations. We're going to cover a lot, but it'll be easier than you think. But before we get started, here's our question of the day. Who do you think is the most hidden OP side noter right now? As in, most wouldn't know they are strong since they don't get played much. Let me know what you think in the comments. So to start off, let's talk about the different types of side noters. The main ones you'll run into are melee bruisers and tanks, but sometimes you'll come across knockback and ranged side noters as well, like Ranger, Virtuoso, and Harbinger. The reason why side nodes cater towards bruisers and tanks is because these locations are the most isolated from their teams. Bruisers and tanks thrive in smaller fights, so they may not have enough damage to contribute to larger brawls at mid, and may not have the mobility to quickly rotate to far, which is generally reserved for your team's roamer to decap or second side noter to fight over. Bruisers and tanks can 1v2 with kiting and defensive skills, and can survive ganks by the enemy roamer. Knockback and ranged side noters aren't played very often right now, but if they are, it's because they can bully the bruisers and tanks very easily from range to gain a health advantage before contesting the node. Doing so may put them at an increased risk of getting plussed, so they have to play around the roamers well to make it work. So bruisers are specs like Spellbreaker, Valk Ranger, Prot Hollow, etc. If I had to give you a good starting bruiser to play, it would definitely be Core Warrior. Core Warrior is very easy to play, and can hard carry most games by winning their matchups with Rampage. Some examples of tanks would be Bunker Vindicator, Mortar Mechanist, or Water Weaver. And for those interested in playing tanks, a good starting tank is Signet Mechanist. Signet Mech has consistent condi pressure, strong area denial, can survive multiple opponents through the use of Shift Signet, and is overall just a pain to deal with, especially at lower ratings. And lastly, for ranged side noters, I would recommend Condi Harbinger. This spec can deal with most bruisers and tanks, can teamfight with their elite, and becomes a huge threat when they're around their allies. If you want to see a guide for this build after the video, click the link in the description below. Now, side noting is also known as the counterpick role for a reason, as some matchups can feel really miserable to play. For example, Bladesworn is a counter to Virtuoso. Because if Virtuoso uses their blocks, a Bladesworn can use their Dragon Trigger for unblockable damage and CC to shut them down. So you will want to choose 1 to 3 side noters to play and learn their matchups. Then you will hopefully be able to counterpick some matchups and get a free kill or node at the start of a match. With that being said, you can win any node no matter how bad the matchup is in Gold and below, as players in the lower ratings won't play the matchup correctly anyways. Of course, it will still make it easier to have good matchups. Alright, so after you pick some specs to play, you will want to head on over to my stream at twitch.tv/blindside_tv to find updated builds. I would love to tell you about all of them, but I can't go over everything in this video. However, the !builds command is great, and you'll find all of the relevant builds in the ranked meta there. Alright, so now that you know which specs you want to play, let's get into rotations. Rotations are the most important part of the game, so mastering them can take you very far. Rotations come down to two main things: map control and snowballing. They go hand in hand, and understanding both are required to win matches. So let's talk about map control first. For side noting, there is one main map control concept you need to understand right away, and that is the matchup advantage. Matchup advantage is basically exactly what you think: pushing an advantageous matchup. The reverse also applies, where you want to avoid losing or disadvantageous matchups. But the first step is actually learning what builds your spec can and can't win against. Once you understand this, you can start positioning yourself in fights where you have a high chance of coming out victorious, and rarely find yourself in situations where you would struggle. By doing this, you will start to create consistent value, and give your teams a big point advantage over the course of a match. So not only do you win more fights, but you also have the map advantage, since the enemy will essentially be losing one of the 3 nodes at all times until they adjust their rotations. So let's look at an example now. In this game, I am playing Longbow Untamed versus a Bladesworn. As the clip starts, the Bladesworn is closest to the node, as he came off respawn and went for a cross while I was busy fighting at mid. Since the enemy is threatening a decap, I disengaged to match. And, as a ranged spec, I swap into my longbow to look for free damage as I close the distance. However, the enemy Bladesworn respects this and plays on the minecart. If I were to shoot him, he would be able to drop down to the other side and line of sight the damage. Now, as a side noter, my job is to maintain control of a capture node my team owns, so before the Bladesworn gets the decap, I teleport in with 1 tick left to prevent it. I also casted a knockback here to try and gain another tick on the node in my favor, but the enemy Bladesworn stun breaks it immediately. So now here comes the part where we trade damage. Bladesworn is a high damage bruiser with crazy sustain. Longbow Untamed is a glassy burst damage roamer. The enemy has the advantage in this matchup, but I have enough survivability to hold the node for a little while. Neither player is making much headway until I land a buffed maul and interrupt the Bladesworn's healing skill. Afterwards, the projectile denial from my Unleash pet skills stop the ranged attacks from the enemy Gunsaber. They heal, and we continue to trade auto attacks. Afterwards, I eat an Axe 2 and some autos from the Bladesworn, before dodging his ranged dragon trigger and knocking him back. At this point, I recognize that I am low on cooldowns, and am forced to give up the node, or else I would die there to the melee pressure. It is important to note that the enemy realizes I am low on health and cooldowns, and knows they can jump in and trade as they have a health and ability advantage. So as I disengage, the enemy Bladesworn lands an Axe 3 and dragon trigger, as I have no ways to avoid it. However, I am playing a high risk, high reward build, and I am actively looking for any misplays the enemy makes to take advantage of it. Here, the enemy Bladesworn doesn't respect my damage potential, wastes a dodge, and I react instantly with a teleport burst combo to quickly down him. My teammate rotates in after to resustain me, and I go back to the node to cap it. But that is one of the most fundamental things about playing any side noder. When playing a bruiser or higher damage spec, you should be looking to end your fights quickly when there are opportunities to do so. At the end of the day, side noding is about capturing and protecting a node you own and surviving. Always disengage to wait for your cooldowns to come back, unless going down and dying on the node will result in a win. And if you can't win a fight against the enemy side noder, flip the map to contest the empty objective or a non-dedicated side noder from the enemy team. Here, you'll either get the cap for free or likely force an advantageous matchup. If you are followed by the enemy side noder, continue flipping the map this way, or team fight if that is impossible. As you saw here, you can win a fight even if you're at a disadvantage by playing around enemy cooldowns, making smart decisions, and using the advantages of your build to either kill the enemy or control a node. In your own games, if you cannot win or decap, you need to respect the enemy and rotate somewhere else. It is okay to give up the node you're fighting on in order to do this, because it is worse to continually push a losing fight, especially on an enemy cap. On the flip side, look to push winning 1v1s. If you are consistently killing an enemy side noder and they are trying to flip the map, you can continue pushing them after you finish capping the node you're on to force the matchup. Another rotational trick you can use to gain an advantage is by forcing the enemy side noder into the team fight. This works the best if you're playing a spec that has a higher impact in the team fight than theirs. As a result, when you push the team fight, you either force a 5v4 if the enemy side noder AFKs on their node, or force an advantageous 5v5. In either of these situations, your team should be able to win and gain control of the map. If you want to look at visuals you can reference for all of your rotations, go to my intermediate PvP guide after this video and watch the role-specific rotation section for side noting and the other roles. Link is in the description below. Speaking of the other roles, let's talk about that now. A lot of players don't understand exactly when they should teamfight and roam as a side noder. Basically, there are 2 times you want to do this: when you can kill or help your teammates kill and try to make a play on the map. It's much simpler than you think when trying to decide when to do each. If you win your 1v1 and aren't in any threat of getting decapped, you can teamfight. If you are in a team fight, your presence will not impact whether your team wins or loses, and you aren't in any threat of getting decapped, you can roam and either pick a kill on an isolated target or push for a decap on the enemy side node. You also want to split for a decap if your team is losing the team fight, even if a node you own is about to get decapped. In this scenario, the map gets flipped and your teammates will be able to contest home when they come off respawn. Make sure you split off before your team dies while the enemy is distracted. Otherwise, it will be much more likely that one of them sees you and also splits off to prevent the decap. Finally, if your team wins a team fight and home is not in any threat of getting decapped, stay to cap while your teammates rotate out. Otherwise, let them cap while you rotate home. So the best case scenario is you cap home uncontested at the start of the match, you rotate mid where you can definitely pick up 1 or more kills. With home not in any threat of getting decapped, you stay to cap mid while your teammates rotate out to far, resulting in a triple cap. Alright guys, that's going to bring us to the end of this video. This should be enough to get you started in the side notes for any class and spec you want to play. Most of the players in lower ratings don't know these concepts, so if you get them down, you will climb quickly when starting out. If you enjoyed and learned something, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications so you know when I release new content. If you want to see more from my channel, click the links here. And as always, I'll see you soon.